Hello everyone and welcome to Wormwood Tales. Sit back, relax and enjoy these story for sleep videos. So before you drift off, I thought it would be a fun idea if everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Let's begin. Inside the car, we see Emma at her late 20s, with sharp eyes that hint at curiosity and determination. She's relaxed, enjoying the quiet of her drive, but there's a slight unease in the air. It was just another long drive through another small town. I was on a road trip, getting away for the weekend. There was something peaceful about the quiet roads, the empty fields. It all felt so ordinary. She turns a bend, and up ahead, nestled just beyond a cluster of trees, she catches sight of it, a large, faded house, standing alone, almost concealed by the shadows of the forest. The house is weathered, with paint peeling from its walls, the porch sagging under years of neglect. Emma's gaze locks onto it as she slows the car almost instinctively. The house looms, dark and imposing, as if watching her from its crooked windows. It looks lifeless, yet somehow aware. Then I saw it. A house, old and crumbling, almost like it had been abandoned for decades. It shouldn't have been anything special. Just another run-down place along a forgotten road. But there was something about it that felt wrong. She shakes her head, a faint smirk on her face as she mutters to herself. Emma, whispering, "Come on, Emma. It's just a house," but as she drives past, her eyes remain glued to it, her mind suddenly alert. A chill runs through her, subtle at first, but undeniable. The house seems to loom larger, almost as though it's shifting to stay within her line of sight. The car moves past, and the house fades from view, but the unsettling feeling lingers. She keeps glancing back in her rearview mirror, expecting to see it again, as though it might have followed her down the road. I laughed it off, tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but there was something about it. It felt like the house was watching me, and the further I drove, the more I felt that creeping chill down my spine. The camera cuts back to the road, a wide shot showing the car shrinking into the distance. The house remains where it was, silent and still, framed by the shadows of the trees, as though waiting. I didn't think about it again. Or, at least, I tried not to. But little did I know, that house wasn't done with me. Cut to black. Cut to Emma traveling through another small town for work, days after her first sighting. The early evening light casts a warm glow over the sleepy town as Emma drives down a quiet street. Suddenly, her hands tighten on the wheel. Her breath catches as she spots the house up ahead. Its unmistakable faded gray paint, a crooked porch swing, and a broken window on the left side. She slows down, staring, disbelieving. She tries to convince herself it's just a look-alike, a coincidence. But even as she drives on, the image of the house stays with her. A strange chill ran through me as I passed it. I felt watched. It was absurd, I told myself. But part of me wondered. Was it just a coincidence? Or was something far stranger going on? Cut to another day, another town. This time, she's with a friend, driving through a different neighborhood. Emma tries to relax, laughing and chatting as they pass houses and shops. But then, she sees it again. The house is there, looming on a hillside, almost as if it's waiting. Her laughter dies. Emma stares in silence, her skin prickling with an eerie sense of recognition. Her friend doesn't notice it, or maybe just doesn't see anything unusual. But Emma can't take her eyes off it. Emma's friend, "You all right, Emma? You look like you've seen a ghost." Emma forces a laugh, brushing it off. She doesn't tell her friend, but inside, her anxiety builds. If the house was somehow following her, it wouldn't make sense. How could a house move from place to place? But the identical details, down to the way the broken window seems to watch her, gnaw at her. That's when the dreams started. In them, I'd find myself walking down familiar streets only to turn a corner and see the house. Every time, it felt closer, like it was somehow pulling me toward it. Cut to Emma's room at night. She lies awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling a heaviness pressing down on her. Each time she closes her eyes, she sees the dark, looming shape of the house. Unable to sleep, she sits at her computer, searching for clues, her fingers trembling as she types keywords: haunted house that appears everywhere, house that moves from town to town. She sifts through pages of urban legends and eerie stories, but nothing matches what she's experiencing. I felt ridiculous, scrolling through ghost stories and forums at 3 in the morning. But I couldn't stop. I had to know if anyone else had seen what I had. Emma's screen reflects in her wide, tired eyes as she scrolls through post after post. Her hand hovers over her phone, tempted to call someone, anyone, who might understand. But who would believe her? One post catches her eye: someone in a distant state describing a house that appears and disappears and seems to follow a pattern. But the post is cryptic, with no details or answers. A strange chill runs through her, and she slams her laptop shut. Over the next few days, the sightings intensify. It becomes more than just random encounters. Emma starts seeing the house closer to home, first in the background as she drives through town, then along her usual running path, as if it's moving ever closer. One day, while walking through a park, she catches a glimpse of it through the trees. It's the same dark, weathered structure, half obscured by shadows. Her heart races, and she stumbles back, the fear building inside her. No matter where I went, it was always there, hiding just out of sight, waiting for me to notice. I could feel it getting closer. And for the first time, I wondered, what would happen if I stopped running from it? At home, Emma's paranoia reaches new heights. She starts locking her doors and windows every night, double-checking them before bed, as if trying to keep the house from somehow finding its way inside. But that night, as she lies awake, she glances out her bedroom window, and gasps. There it is, standing in the shadows at the end of her street, dark and silent, as if it's waiting for her. Emma stumbles back, covering her mouth to keep from screaming. She turns off the lights, praying it will disappear with the dawn. But she knows that her connection to the house has gone too far. I realized then that ignoring it wouldn't make it go away. The house, it was calling me. And it wouldn't stop until I answered. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get that house out of my head. It was like it had burrowed itself into my mind, following me as I slept, as I worked. I knew I needed answers, and I needed them fast. Cut to Emma scrolling through online forums in a dimly lit room, the glow from her laptop casting shadows on her tired face. She types keywords into search engines: haunted house, house that moves, ghost houses, and browses through pages of myths, urban legends, and ghost sightings. She clicks on article after article, reading stories of haunted places, cursed buildings, and ghostly figures that haunt old properties, but nothing matches the specifics of her experiences. I wanted to believe it was just a coincidence, just a harmless fascination. But the more I searched, the more I felt this creeping dread. There was no mention of any house like this, nothing that could explain a building that moved from town to town. No one seemed to understand. No one could see what I was seeing. Late into the night, she leans back, rubbing her temples as exhaustion sets in. Her eyes are red from lack of sleep, and she's surrounded by piles of notes, sketches of the house, maps of the towns where she's seen it, and scattered pages of folklore she's printed out, trying to make sense of it all. Then, one night, she stumbles across a tiny forum post from a user with the screen name Haunted Traveler. The post is simple, barely noticeable among the other supernatural entries. On-screen text: has anyone else seen the same house in different places? I feel like it's following me. Emma's fingers hover over the keyboard, her breath catching. Her eyes widen as she reads. She sends a message to the user, hoping for a quick reply, but it goes unanswered. Days go by without a response, and Emma becomes more isolated, more desperate. She continues to lose sleep, her nights haunted by visions of the house. It appears in her dreams, each time getting closer, each time more ominous. I knew then that I couldn't keep waiting for answers. If no one else could tell me what was going on, I'd have to find out myself. Cut to Emma driving late at night, the streets empty and shrouded in fog. Her face is pale, her expression determined but frightened. She's mapped out each location where she's seen the house, creating a pattern that she hopes might reveal its next location. She reaches a secluded street and slows down, her heart racing as she rounds the corner. There it is, the house. Larger, darker, and more ominous than before, its windows like empty, watchful eyes. It was like it was, waiting for me, as if it knew I'd come. Emma pulls over, hands shaking as she clutches the steering wheel. Her heart pounds, every instinct telling her to turn around, to leave it alone. But she can't. She knows that if she doesn't confront it, the house will never stop haunting her. She grabs her flashlight and steps out of the car, walking slowly up to the house, her footsteps echoing in the empty night. Inside, the air is cold, stale, and the walls are lined with shadows that seem to twist as she moves. She shines her flashlight across the room, the beam illuminating dusty furniture and cobwebs. Suddenly, her flashlight flickers over something that makes her blood run cold. It's her own sweater, one she lost years ago, lying draped over a chair. She picks it up, hands trembling as she realizes it's not just similar, it's hers. The familiar stitching, the tiny stain on the sleeve from an old coffee spill. She drops it, horrified. That was when I realized, the house didn't just know me. It had been watching me for a long time. Emma continues to move through the rooms, finding other personal items, an old diary, a hairbrush, even a photograph she thought she'd misplaced years ago. The rooms are filled with pieces of her life, relics that she thought she'd lost or forgotten. But here they are, all collected by the house. Her breathing quickens as the walls seem to close in around her, shadows stretching and growing darker. She turns to leave, but the hallway twists, leading her back to the same room. No matter where she goes, she ends up in the same place. I was trapped. The house wouldn't let me leave. And then I heard it, the sound I'd been dreading. My name, whispered from every corner. The whispers grow louder, filling the room as the shadows deepen. She spins, trying to find an escape, but every door is locked, every window closed. She realizes with dawning horror that the house has been waiting for this moment all along. And just as everything goes dark, she opens her eyes and finds herself standing outside again, the house gone as if it were never there. Her breaths come in shallow gasps as she looks around, trying to understand what just happened. Did she escape? Was it a dream? But the panic doesn't fully leave her, something about the experience clings to her. Weeks later, she tries to convince herself it's over. She's moved to a new town, started fresh, but the feeling of being watched never fully fades. Then, one night, as she's driving home on a lonely road, she glances out her window. And there it is. The same faded house, the same crooked shutters, the same creaking porch swing, waiting for her. Only this time, the door is wide open, the dark interior beckoning her. The screen fades to black as Emma's trembling hands grip the steering wheel, her breath hitching as the house stands, patiently, inviting her in once again. Cut to several weeks later. Emma has moved to a new city, hundreds of miles from her last sighting of the house. She's cautiously optimistic, beginning to feel like the nightmare is finally over. She spends her days exploring her new surroundings, adjusting to a new job, and attempting to put the past behind her. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe again. No more sightings, no more dreams of creaking floorboards and whispering walls. I was finally free. Or at least, that's what I wanted to believe. Cut to a quiet evening. Emma is driving home after a late night at work. She's feeling relaxed, even sleepy. Soft music plays on the radio, and the street lights cast a warm glow over the empty road. As she drives, she takes a different route, a shortcut through the outskirts of town. The road narrows, flanked by tall trees and a stretch of land that's nearly pitch black. The warm glow of city lights fades into the distance, replaced by the darkness of the countryside. Suddenly, she catches a glimpse of something on the side of the road up ahead. At first, she dismisses it as another old, abandoned building, a common enough sight on quiet roads like this. But as she draws closer, the hairs on the back of her neck start to rise. The house looms out of the darkness, unmistakable, the same faded gray paint, the tilted shutters, the broken window on the left side. My heart stopped. It couldn't be. I had left that town. Left that house. And yet, there it was. Like it had been waiting for me to find it again. Emma's hands tighten on the steering wheel, her pulse pounding in her ears. She forces herself to keep driving, her mind racing with panic and disbelief. She wants to look away, but the house seems to draw her in, like an invisible tether she can't break free from. As she speeds past, her eyes linger on the front porch. In the dim light, she can just make out a shadowy figure standing there, watching her. The figure raises a hand, as if to wave, or beckon. That's when I knew. I could move 1,000 miles away, but the house would always find me. The screen fades to black as the camera lingers on Emma's terrified face, the faint outline of the house receding in her rearview mirror. Some places, some nightmares, never let you go.